Certain features come out in Photoshop, and past the original release date of Photoshop, you tend to not hear about them a whole lot. And Puppet Warp is one of those tools, but we're going to take a look at some way that you could possibly use it here. So, if you're a photographer and you're thinking, I'm not normally going to move people's limbs and things like that, there are a couple creative uses of Puppet Warp. So one of the first things to know about Puppet Warp is it revolves around having a selection. If I go and I try to Puppet Warp this person and try to move his arm, it's going to stretch the whole background because it doesn't really know where he stops and the background begins. So what I'll do is I'll take the quick selection tool, and I'm just going to go through and make a pretty quick selection. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on it. All right, and just kind of get the outlines, get his shoes, pants, and pretty close down here, get that other foot. And that's about all the time I am going to spend on it. What I am going to do is just make sure I subtract. I'm holding down my Option key on Mac, Alt on a PC, and just make sure I subtract that area that's in there. If it goes too far, then I'll just come in and just fine tune it. But I do want to make sure I get the space between his arm and his leg there, because that's, again, there's background in there. I need that to make what I'm about to do here believable. All right, so we've got our selection. Next thing we do is just go into Refine Edge, and I'm not going to do a whole lot of work in Refine Edge. I'm going to go to Smart Radius, just crank it up about halfway, and that's just going to fix the edge for me, just kind of smooth it out a little bit, hit OK. All right, so I have a pretty generic selection around this person. It's not perfect, but I'm going to duplicate it 3 times. Command-J on the Mac, Control-J on the PC. So 1, 2, 3. All right, so let's hide all of them except the bottom one. We'll go to the bottom one. We're going to go to Edit, go down here to Puppet Warp. And what we want to do is, the way Puppet Warp works is you drop a little anchor point here, and now I can move this image. But since I don't have any other anchor points, it's moving the entire thing, right? So let me undo. I'm going to drop another anchor point. And if I click on an anchor point, I can then move it, but now it only has one more anchor point, so it's kind of rotating him around. Okay? So what we have to do is we have to go in and we have to anchor or lock down certain parts of what we don't want to move, as well as what we do want to move. So I'm going to put one on his head here. I'm going to put on his shoulder back here, on his knee, on his hips. One on his knee here, one on his foot, one on his foot here. I usually do all the limbs and then one right in the middle of the body. So what we're doing is we're not only telling Photoshop what we want to move, because what I want to move is this anchor point, this one, and this one. I want to move his arm. All right. But what I'm also telling Photoshop is what to leave alone, because if I don't select it, it'll keep that area in place. So watch, if I hold down the Shift key and I select this one, and I hold down the Shift key and I select this one, and I just click and drag, you could see how I could start to move this. He's like doing the wave. All right. So in fact, we can even drop down another one on his shoulder. So let me select these 3. All right. And now you're going to see it starts moving it up. And if I deselect, and that's just by clicking on one of them, now I can even kind of put that one out a little bit. And I can click here and bring this one down a little bit. So now we've got his arm going up here. So, but what did it do? It only moved the anchor points I moved. You'll see how it locked down everything else. So hit Enter or Return. So that's one. Let's turn off that one. Let's actually keep it on and just reduce the opacity, just so we know where it is. Okay. Let's go to the next one here. Go to the Edit menu. Go down here to Puppet Warp. Same thing. We're just going to drop anchor points where we want things to stay put, or where we want to move things. At this point, we don't even know. We're just putting anchor points on some areas we think we're going to want to work with. So now I click, I shift click, shift click, shift click again, and now I'll move this one up even further. Okay, now it's really distorted everything, so now I just click on one point, bring it down, bring it down, bring it up. Looks a little weird. It's like he's got a wing. Kind of bring it in a little bit. Okay, and you can start to see what we're doing here, and we're not even going to bother with that part there. Okay, we could drop in another anchor point there, and we can kind of bring this in. You can see it makes him do a little wave, a little flip of the hand, so we'll try to bring that down a little too. Okay, so now, in fact, I might drop one there and just bring that in. Enter or Return. So now we've got an arm up there. Now, do things start to look a little bit weird? Absolutely. We're distorting this person into very, very weird ways. But here's where I a suggestion of how you could use this. Don't take it so literal as it's really distorting his arm. Let's turn on the top copy, which we know is just the regular copy. So if we turn off the bottom copy, or the middle two copies, we have the original layer, and we have the top copy, which is basically the same thing as the original layer. Let's turn on the two that are in between and reduce their opacity down here to about 30%. 20-30%. And look at what we've done. We've actually created a little bit of motion, all right? And you could even kind of fake this a little bit. Once you get a couple in there, what you could do is press Command or Control J to duplicate, go into Free Transform, and just put one right in between, okay? Now what you need to do is, you could see here, I gotta actually tell you, it's kind of like a happy accident because it looks kind of neat that his face is tilting there. So I actually don't mind it too much. It is weird that his foot changed down here. So what we would do is we take our eraser tool and erase that away. But I kind of like that his shoulder is up here and that his head turned. Originally I was going to erase that away like this, but I actually kind of think it's pretty cool because it's like almost a little bit of motion. It's not so much blurred motion. It's almost like we stopped him at each one of these intervals and kind of just reduce it a little bit. So we'll come in here, we'll kind of just paint some of that away and just go into any areas where things do start to look good. You can just erase it. So all we really have is the base up here. And then we have the blurred versions right behind it. Heck, even when you turn off the base, it kind of looks cool blurry too. So there's lots of different creative possibilities with this tool. Don't take it so literal that we're going to go inside of here and we're going to just be maneuvering people's limbs and doing crazy things to people. Think of it more as a creative tool where you can kind of add to something with it. And it's got a very specific use for it, but once you learn how to use it, once you learn where it works, what to lock down, what not to lock down, it does become a lot more useful.